Hey guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming. Got a great one lined up for you today. And before we get to the guests, I'd like to take care of some channel business. There is PayPal and Patreon links in the box below. And I'd like to shout out my Patreons here today because without them, this show would not exist. Got Sam Hine, Felix Hung, Guitar Craig, Sally Bayless, Chow Yun Cat, James Mays, Eagle Plane and Anchor, Silver Umbrella, Texas Mike, Fireball X. Like I said, this isn't lip service. Without them, this show would not exist. So, for our guest, how's it going out there? We have Nathan Oakley. Sir.
Oh.
The Adam Meakin. Sir.
Good evening, good evening, everyone.
Betty Van Velsen. Ma'am.
Hey, hello. Good evening.
That's awesome. How's it going out there, folks? Do we have anyone else in Discord? I didn't check it.
Yeah. I'm here, QE.
Hey, what's up, 10th? How's it going, sir?
Just got your message last minute. Everything's good.
The last minute. Yeah, it's always best the last minute. Yeah. So, it's been pretty funny because I haven't done a live show in, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks. It seems like 6 months. I went in here today. I pulled up OBS for the first time. I'll tell you what, I have to admit, I was a little lost. I didn't know what to do, right? So that was pretty funny. So it ought to be a great show. Too funny. Yeah. All right, go ahead. What's up? What's new?
Well, did you forget already? I mean, a year has passed and then you forget all about everything?
Not all about everything, just little things. I'm also a year older, so, cut me some slack.
How old?
We don't want to go there just yet. It's all relative.
Yeah, because we're not going around the sun.
The good thing is that you're only aging, you're not evolving.
Wait a second, evolving? What's that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, but you want a little chit chat, I give it to you.
Increase the enthusiasm now.
So shout out to
not all at once.
I was going to say on Saturday, 7 p.m. UK time, 2 p.m. Central Standard, I believe. Be here or be Sphere on the Quantum Eraser channel or Ballbusters Live. So there's going to be a brand new flat Earth proof. You don't want to miss it.
No, it's the unveiling of the #1 ball killer. Irrefutable. It's over. So you need to be here. Tell all your friends and your family, clergy, bartenders, everyone to be here. Because it's irrefutable. The ballers, they've been done since 2015, but they're done with this one. It's over. So make sure you guys are all here. It's going to be a hoot.
Is this the retort to and any baller that's ever asked you the question, well, where's your edge? Is this a retort to that?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I think Nathan can speak to this. We don't want to go in any great depth, even though I have put this presentation, not the presentation, but the proof out to literally thousands of people over the past 2 weeks. What I wanted to do was get the rebuttals back. Now, I knew most would be incoherent, as they usually are, but there was a couple good ones. So we're going to go over those rebuttals and then drive the stake in their heart rather quickly. But the edge, yeah, that's part yes and no. I think Nathan can speak to that. If he'd like. I'm not forcing him to, but yeah.
I don't want to spoil it either. So I mean, there might be some clarity given to both sides when it comes to the assumption of an edge when describing the horizon, and that assumption of a geometric edge as opposed to the apparent location we experience sometimes gets convoluted. And yeah, on both sides. I'm the same as you. I want to plug ballbusters and say be here or be sphere. You know, that will come up. And yes, you're right, Adam, the fundies have an edge, we don't.
Yeah, it's another one of our unveilings of their fantastic bits of projection that they start with us on. So yeah, leave it there. Looking forward to it.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems out there is they don't even understand refraction themselves. That's what's so scary. I've been listening to a lot of shows lately, and it looks like it's circling back to distance photographs and, you know, inferior and superior mirages. I hear a lot of people talking about refraction. I don't hear anyone defining it. You? Anyone?
No, I've never heard it being defined.
It seems like they've got it doing things that it can't do.
It's quite shocking that the refraction, now we've heard refraction like gravity for the past 3.5 years, but some of you guys a little bit longer. But isn't it shocking to you that people don't define it? Okay, refraction. Okay, what is that? I'm not talking about your fairy tale light. What and the aspects of light. I'm talking about what are the effects, and define them, demonstrate them. You don't. No one. They don't do it. And then you got ballers. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if I was just trying to summarize in my head what a baller's definition of refraction is, and I'd probably summarize it as refraction is the thing that it does to light that they need it to do, and the mechanism of this is too complicated for you flat earthers to understand.
Yeah, that's baloney. That's baloney.
Yeah, well, performs a service of a statement. They just use the term refraction as a statement to reify what they're seeing as actually a hologram, isn't it? It's to be able to paint it as a hologram instead of it just being there. It does exactly what's required at every single distance perfectly. Mechanistically, you're correct. They don't ever define it, because by doing so, I think most fundamentally they'd have to recognise that mechanistically it bends the other way, as demonstrated by Dr. John.
Oh God, it was a loaded question. So he's asking about refraction. QE quantum erasers saying what is refraction and why aren't they defining it? Well, that's because they're not using or utilizing the actual effects of refraction. That never comes into the question. They're using something completely different. Terrestrial refraction. Now, terrestrial refraction is to chicken what faux pretend chicken is, like vegetarian chicken is not chicken. Well, standard refraction, or terrestrial refraction, more accurately named, 7/6R, is absolutely nothing to do with refraction, the effects that happen in reality. It's merely the bending of light around a presupposed sphere. And when they come to talking about refraction, yeah, they're talking about what happens in a picture, but they're actually detailing something that's not refraction. And that's terrestrial refraction, 7/6R. They're two different things.
That's true. And the scary part, here's another scary one. And I've heard this a number of times over the past 2 months. Ballers asking flat earthers, why do things disappear from the bottom up? What's the explanation for that on your model? Well, what's the explanation for bottom up? We don't understand. But in the next breath or in the next presentation, talk about refraction for the next half an hour. Ballers. Newsflash, right? One of the effects of refraction, your refraction, it's called sinking. Guess what that means in your fairy tale model, the way you describe, well, not the way you describe it, the way your fairy tale, quote unquote, pseudosciences describe it, right? Sinking. That is, objects are below the horizon, which are normally above it. So what in the world are you guys thinking? Do you just think you could say words, right? And that kind of covers you. You don't have to define them. And then you ask us questions that your own model describes to you and explains to you. I'm gobsmacked. What's up with that? Yeah, I know. Crickets. Yeah, but listen, we're getting off on a tangent here. That's not what this discussion is about today or this presentation. We are back, unless anyone wants to follow up with any refraction, and then we can anchor it right there. How about that?
I was just waiting for chocolate to cut in on you. Now he's arrived.
Hello.
Oh, great. You sound enthusiastic. Just what we needed.
What? Say hello.
Maybe he doesn't have his coffee with foam yet. Or no
Yeah, I
foam.
haven't had my accelerating coffee yet. No foam.
Yeah, was it with or
Nah.
without foam? I don't know.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm with Adam. Refraction, the way they use it, they just use it to mean that it's doing whatever it needs to do to try to explain whatever we're trying to explain. That's all that's all it sounds like to me every time they use refraction. It's like this the same way they use gravity. Gravity. They're just words. Like I don't remember who said it. They're just saying words, science words, and making it seem smart. Like it's ridiculous.
Didn't
Makes no sense.
Ranty show a video today of an RC boat on a lake, and it was underwater, then it was floating, then it disappeared, and it's on a 615 feet long lake, and it's just optical density. That's all.
Did you see the goose?
I missed that, but I did catch your reaction to it.
I'm watching this. Ranty posted this video, right? He goes, here, check this out. I'm watching the boat, and then all of a sudden, like Godzilla, this big goose comes right and scared the daylights out of me. It's so funny. But it's a great video, man, just to check it out. He didn't play the goose yet. He needs to play the goose. Too funny.
It's just odd to think that Ranty goosed you today.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on refraction so we can get to the meat of the presentation? That's what I thought. So
I came to find out about the primordial superfish frog people. That's what I want to know about.
Yeah, we did that in episode 1 or episode 2. This is an add-on to that. This is episode 5. This is the final installment. The reason I did this, I was incessantly pawed at to beg the question and then go after some of their so-called evidences that they provide without back to, again, not defining things. How can you provide evidence for something you haven't defined yet? I know why. You could just make shit up and then worry about the definition afterwards to fit it. I see what you're doing. Yeah, I got that part. Yeah. We're going to train wreck your evidences anyway, even without the definition. So get ready. Oh, and this is dedicated to Adam. 2/3 of this presentation, because the presentation was completed in episode 4, but Adam decided to bring up a couple new subjects that we needed to go over. Plus, I am doing Captain. There be whales here again, because it seemed we had some audio issues the last time, and I didn't want to leave the fine professor at the University of Michigan off. So, go ahead.
Can I shout out a super chat when there's still a pause somewhere?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we got a super chat from Alexander, and he says, "Globers don't know their model. We must explain it to them." And then a smiley face with tears.
Mean to tell me Globers don't know their reification fallacy? I mean model. That's shocking.
Yep.
All right, we ready to
Yeah.
roll? Everyone ready? Final thoughts
Yeah.
on final thoughts before we get to the presentation. Anyone?
I want to get to the whales.
Captain,
Come on, let's see the Pakistani whale dog.
I need this. I need Scotty. I need a Scotty to say this, not a pirate. Scotty, Irish, Scottish.
I can't change the laws of physics, Captain, but I do know that I need a Pakistani whale dog from Glaswegian to Chukta, didn't it? But there you go. That's as good as it. It's better than the pirate last time I tried it.
Yeah, the pirate was fine. It sounded good, but it was contrived.
So
All right.
that we don't get any comments. Scottish.
Scottish, I'm sorry. Yes. Not Irish, Scottish.
What's
All
a
right.
Pakistani whale dog?
Yeah.
You'll find out, Temp.
Yeah, you're going to
The
find out
Indian
again.
whale.
All right,
You start?
Captain. Okay, go ahead.
Should we start? I was just trying to stop all the rumpusing.
Yeah, we're going to roll right now. So, Captain Derby Wells here. What I'm going to do is, this is the lineage of, the alleged lineage of how we got whales. And what I'm going to do here, I'm gonna take Pakicetus to the woodshed. I'm not going to do it. It's going to be self-evident in a little less than 5 seconds and a pretty good belly laugher. And then I'm going to allow Professor Gingrich at the University of Michigan to go ahead and pummel Ambulocetus right here and Rotocetus right here and just train wreck the whole lineage. I mean, this is a flippin' joke. All right, so let's start off with Pakicetus, and this is from Wiki. So they're alma mater, so we're not straw manning them. Pakicetus is an extinct genus of amphibious cetacean of the family Pakicetidae, which was endemic to modern Pakistan during the Eocene. The vast majority of paleontologists regard it as the most basal whale. There's your whale, folks. This is what paleontologists treat as their most basal whale. I'll go on, Moot.
A Pakistani dog? It looks more to me like a dog, right?
Wait, what?
Ladies and gentlemen of the world, this is a whale. According to paleontologists. I'll go on, Moot.
Where are the
Oh.
flippers? And the tail?
Whales don't go woof, do they?
That-
yeah.
Is this the Pakistan whale that Adam was referencing?
Pakistani whale dog.
Pakistan whale dog. It's 4 feet long, it looks like. It's got 4 feet.
I'm totally convinced. Whale.
Wow.
I don't know what to say, people. If I have to go into an explanation why they're delusional and should be institutionalized, if I have to explain that to you after this, you're delusional and you should be institutionalized. Okay? Sorry.
Well, when they don't have any actual evolution taking place, they're going to say this is a whale. It does fit their script. They have to make something be a whale.
This is almost as good as the fish frog people. This is pretty awesome. It's a whale dog. You can learn something new every day. What the hell is this, man? So they're telling us that whales came from whatever this is?
Yes,
Is that the story?
Yes, this is a basal whale.
Come on, Moot. Oh.
Yeah. Let's move on from that. Like I said, I destroyed that one. I don't really have to do anything. I just show you and then tell you what they think it is. That's all I need to do. These are grown adults saying this. So let's finish it up. Somewhat more complete skeletal remains were discovered in 2001, prompting the view that Pakicetus was primarily a land animal about the size of a wolf, very similar in form to related Masonichids. Thiessen et al., he's a subject matter expert in this area, 2000 wrote that Pakicetids were terrestrial mammals, no more amphibious than a tapir.
Right, John, right. Just look at the picture, just so I can read. Somewhat more, just scroll down a little bit, just so I can read the next. Somewhat more complete skeletal remains were discovered in 2001, promoting the view that it was a dog, right? How few bones did they have before where they thought, this is probably a whale?
Adam, I don't know the answer to that question. It's a good one, though.
I've just looked it up, and it seems they're arbitrarily classified as the same thing anyway. In dogs and whales, they're same categorization, at least by some standards.
Preposterous. This is preposterous ludicrousness, absurdity. So, like I said, they took Pakicetus down the tubes, right? So the next two are Ambulocetus and Rhodocetus in the line leading to your whale here. Okay. So what I have for you is, have you heard of Dr. Philip Gingrich? Right? Let's pull him up. Go ahead and put him on mute. 1 second, please. I love buffering. Let's go ahead and make this a little bigger. I want to make sure you guys see who this is.
While you're getting that ready, John, I was just thinking that timeline that's there, with what Chocolate was saying about frog people, but maybe their timeline doesn't go far back enough, because that just goes back from a land mammal to a whale. But surely it should go back a bit further, where you've got a fish turning into a frog, then a frog dog, then a frog whale, and then back to a whale dog, and then a whale.
That makes more sense than this. So, like I said, Pakicetus, he's done, right? So this all, I don't even know why I have to do this, but.
Well, he was done because they dug up bones, didn't they?
Yeah, he was done, but their little fairy tale's done. I'm embarrassed to even go through this. But we got to do what we got to do. Like I said, Dr. Philip Gingrich. Now, this gentleman right here from the University of Michigan was the main player behind all of this whale nonsense, evolution nonsense. You're going to be shocked at what he has to say. All right? Let's let him say it.
Ambulocetus may be on a slight sideline, and we think that mostly because it's very strange. It has its eyes raised up on top of its head in a very strange way, and it's unusually large for an early whale. But mostly the eyes up on the top of the head seems like an unusual specialization. Maybe it's not on the main line.
Dr. Phil Gingrich, the scientist responsible for the discovery and reconstruction of Rhodocetus, was questioned how he knew there was a whale fluke on Rhodocetus, since that part of the fossil was missing.
What was the reasoning that the scientists think there was a fluke on Rhodocetus based on the other pieces of anatomy?
Well, I told you we don't have the tail in Rhodocetus. So we don't know for sure whether it had a ball vertebra indicating a fluke or not. So I speculated it might have had a fluke.
Scientist Gingrich also acknowledged that the flippers were drawn on the diagram without these fossils. Now, he does not believe this animal had flippers. Again, his answer was surprising, since the museum diagrams had flippers on Rhodocetus.
Now, since then, we've found the forelimbs, the hands, and the front arm, the arms, in other words, of Rhodocetus. And we understand that it doesn't have the kind of arms that can be spread out like flippers are on a whale. And if you don't have flippers, I don't think you can have a fluke tail and really powered swimming. And so I now doubt that Rhodocetus would have had a fluke tail.
All right, so did everyone get that? The professor
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, hold on. The professor and director of the Museum of Paleontology at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, the subject matter expert that conjured a good portion of this mess, right? Did you hear what he said? We're going to go over a couple of them here right now. Ambulocetus, this is from Dr. Philip Gingrich. Ambulocetus has its eyes raised up on its head in a very strange way and is unusually large for an early whale. Maybe it's not on the main line. You think, Phil? Dr. Phil, what line might that be? And can you please
John,
list...
so the first point was they thought it was a whale because its eyes were in a different position to where a whale has its eyes.
I don't know what they thought.
Well, that seems to be what they were saying.
That makes sense. I see what you're saying, Adam.
Yeah, but it didn't have flippers, and they had to draw it on.
What I got from that was we thought it was a whale because its eyes were in a different position to where a whale has, and because of that, we assumed it had flippers, even though it didn't have flippers. But the assumption was made before we actually found its lower limbs. When we found out it didn't have flippers, we also realised that the bullshit we made up about the tail was probably not correct, or actually no longer justifiable to stick that sticky out bit on, which we had no fossil evidence for either.
Yes, and we're going to go over that here in a couple seconds. So, I just wanted to sidetrack it. Not sidetrack it very much, but can you list the bones that were found for Ambulocetus, right? So you got from Tweeson, like I said, he's the subject matter expert in this area. This is what they thought it looked like up here in A, right? But the actual stippled bones here, those were the actual bones that were found, right? And the bones colored in red were found 5 meters above the rest. This is all they had. Listen, I had more bones in my chicken last night. Right? This is a joke. That's all they had. So, Rhodocetus, initially they didn't have any of these. Which X marks the spot. They didn't have any of this. Yeah? That didn't stop them. Dr. Phil, I speculated that it might... I'm sorry, this is Rhodocetus. I speculated that it might have a fluke tail. Right here, he speculated that. I now doubt that Rhodocetus would have had a fluke tail. So translation, Dr. Phil didn't have the tail, so he conjured it and then drew it in. Drew it. Drawings, artistic license. Dr. Phil again. Since then, we have found the forelimbs, hands, and front arms of Rhodocetus, and we understand that it doesn't have the kind of arms that can be spread out like flippers are on a whale. If you don't have flippers, I don't think you can have a fluke tail and really powered swimming. So they didn't have any of this, but they drew it in anyway. Let me tell you something. I want somebody to do me a favor. Whoever lives close to the University of Michigan and the Museum of Paleontology, if you get a chance, I'd like somebody to show up there and go to their whale evolution, because I'll guarantee you it's still there. And I will bet that they still have this monkey drawn in their line for evolution. And I'll bet you it's a fluke tail. How much you want to bet? That's it for this one. This is a friggin' joke. Comments, questions?
Artistic license, you say, so he just scribbled it in based on his thoughts.
Yeah. He conjured it and then drew it in. That's it. What you got?
Stunning.
I think. Can you just go back, John, to the quote where, but we were kind of discussing in the week. I think on Monday on Nathan's show, or in the after show about it was Arwen that raised it up, how a blatant lie is painted as a mistake or a mathematical error, or in this case, a misinterpretation of the bones.
What you need?
He actually says, the bit that relates to he drew it in, which is basically what's being said, but that's probably not necessarily. The point being that they make it up, but it's not admitted. Like if I did that in my line of work, it's just a blatant lie. It's just a blatant bit of bullshit I made up, right, to look good, yeah, which was incorrect, yeah. And now in the most walks of life, that would have consequences and wouldn't be tolerated.
Not a spin doctor. So your former speculation turned out to be incorrect. That's how you spin it.
It is political, isn't it? The way exactly you sum it up, Mason. There's a spin doctor. Like I say, it's not an admission of complete falsehood. And actually, I'm going to go on and do more falsehood in the next thing. It's just oops, sorry, we didn't realise this, so we couldn't justify this anymore. As if that in itself is an explanation, whereas you know what I mean? Whereas in actual fact, it's an admission of more guilt and future guilt to carry on just working for MSU.
There's no science in this, remember. Zero science whatsoever. So they went on a speculation and drew all these parts in. How many kids have gone through that museum in the whale evolution part and been taught on whale evolution, do you think? Roughly. Over the years. Yeah. That's right. Speculation. That's it. That's all it was. And now it's not even speculation. He's admitted that it was all horse shit to begin with. Wow, I'd really like to be a doctor. Wow, man. Wow. Yeah.
I'd say, Tom, the worst bit is that when he goes, when it was shown that the bit I made up about the feet to be totally incorrect, I really couldn't carry on supporting the bit I made up about the tail anymore.
Exactly. Yep.
It's absolutely shocking kind of academic dishonesty. It's really appalling in terms of kind of disguising the validity for your supposition beforehand. It is basically as you know, my reaction to it is basically saying I just made all of this up and I'll continue to just keep on making it up because you suckers love it.
Well, Adam, you got a point there, because if this was a one-off, maybe. But since the other teacher from the other university made a guess so he could have some relevance in this field, then another one did it and they were wrong. Now he's got to do it. He can't sit there 5 years without some discovery. So he makes up a discovery and they just keep taking turns on the roulette wheel, making up crap.
Yeah, but how in the world does he dare now come out for it and expose his own lies? I mean,
it wasn't a lie, but they won't say it's a lie. They'll say it was an honest mistake, and we learn from them and we go on.
How can you say that this is an honest mistake when you're just taking the whole liberty of changing something that is not really there? You don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Didn't I just cover that?
Yeah, you did.
No, overt lie. His former speculation turned out to be incorrect. Now, the fact that his admission is completely ignored by the people who punt this nonsense, and it will still be put out as scientists say, is irrelevant. In other words, they take the bits they need, which is to say that this proves whale evolution, and then the fact that he's come back after the fact and said, well, actually, no, it's definitely incorrect, I drew it. That doesn't matter. You can ignore that bit.
Yeah, but that amazes me. I mean, because it's being repetitioned a lot of in schools and stuff, people's minds will be wrapped around that and never understand that this guy basically made stuff up. He was just fantasizing. How many more things did they fantasize about?
But that's what evolution is, make stuff up.
Well, apparently a lot of science, quote unquote, is that.
Pseudoscience, not science.
Yeah, now we have to find it. Well, it's amazing to me that he can't that he can say it just like that without even blushing or even squinting or whatever, right? I mean, you just made something up. The whole world believes it. Nobody ever will know that some of these things are being retracted by him saying this.
But
And
look at his pedigree, Betty. The teachers and the evolutionists prior to him did the same thing. He's just doing what they did. And when they said, "Oh, it was a mistake," and then they get away with it after millions of people buy into it, never see the retraction of the false statement, it's just ongoing.
yeah, still, it's.
Does
I can't
does that
understand why people
remind
are so
you?
dishonest.
Does that remind you of? Oh, the model is wrong. Very flippantly.
Yeah,
It's like,
but we
oh,
can
we
predict.
just messed up. We
Yeah,
just
They
messed
can't
up. Oh,
Grumpa said it today. We learn from our mistakes and we move on. But for 10, 20 years, we believed it was real without any scientific validity.
And he has a doctor behind his name, right? He's a doctor, PhD in paleontology. That carries
I
some
find
weight.
Someone said something funny in chat, and he says, "QE cured my crayon addiction." I like that one.
Yeah, you got to watch out for those crayons, boy. I know they're attractive to most of you. Careful.
Lovely colors.
Anything else? I don't know if we need to go over anything else with this. This whale evolution, the poster child for absolute preposterous absurdity from grown adults. I don't know if it gets any worse than that. All right, final thoughts on that one. We're going to move on.
I think I'd.
Nope.
I think that was great.
Yeah.
That guy
We've covered
destroyed
it before,
himself.
haven't we, John? Sorry.
Yeah, we covered it the last time. I hope the sound came through that time. I had good.
Well,
I had some good
that
sound
wasn't
levels.
the point. What I mean is, we covered it before, and we were quite triggered. And it's interesting actually when you do go over some topics again, you don't necessarily feel the passion, but that is so outrageous, so bloody outrageous, isn't it? That I'm not. You know that it, like you say, you can go to the university. I bet it's still there, and we certainly can guarantee that they're still in textbooks. Those images, just the goal of it. After,
It's appalling. I would go as far as to say that it's fraud. Knowing fraud. That's right. I said it. Fraud. Can anyone rebut that? He knowingly did it. He admitted he did it.
If I went right and dug up the top half of a bike, right, and I brought it to you and I said, and I've got all this stuff, and you won't believe it. If you can give me this research grant, right, you won't believe. Here's a picture. I've drawn what it is. It's a hover bike. Yeah. And then actually after giving me £1 million and me shelling out having fun in Arizona for a bit or whatever. Yeah. Oh, actually, I've got to admit it weren't. It's just a normal bike. You know, if you did that in any other walk of life, it would be exactly what you said. It would be fraud.
I covered this. Former speculation turned out to be incorrect.
Plausible deniability. Yeah.
No, but the whole system is set up that they keep giving grants for these phony stories because they need the phony stories, and individuals who don't mind lying to play the part of a doctor, because the grants keep coming in if you keep evolution alive without any facts.
Yeah. Yep. It's appalling. It's a fraud, and we can move on. I think we've exposed it. It was exposed many years ago. I'm just going over old ground right here. But we have some new ground with junk DNA. How you like this? Boy, everyone's heard this before, right? Alan B. was the most recent knucklehead to spout it, right? But all he says is junk DNA. Yeah, well, what's that? Junk DNA. That's all these pretender clowns can do. They have no idea with what they're talking about. They just parrot the headlines from their pseudoscience priests that they get from Wiki or Discovery Channel, right? Let's take a look at this. Junk DNA. In other words, you can call just what they classified it as non-protein coding DNA. Where this started was 2 papers appeared back to back in the journal Nature in 1980 from Doolittle and Sapienza, Selfish Genes. That should perk your ears up. The Phenotype Paradigm and Genome Evolution. And then Crick and Orgel, right? Orgel, and we're going to hear from him below, and you heard from him before in a few of my presentations. He is the grand poobah of origin of life research. And then Francis Crick right here. You know who this guy is, right? Everyone knows who he is. The discoverer of DNA. Him and his buddy, Watson and Crick, right? Yeah. These 2 guys are panspermious. That is, they think life was seeded by aliens here on Earth. Yeah, these are the scientists in Selfish DNA, the ultimate parasite, right? So these 2 papers were published in 1980, and where they essentially said in both documents that it's intellectually a waste of time to study the so-called junk. Probably had nothing to do with Dick Dawkins' 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, right? Probably has nothing to do with that, right? You see all this stuff up here? Nothing to do with that. All right. But thank you. Priceless. Who else was ready? Go ahead.
I was say, did you say Crick and Orgel were? Well, Crick, Watson, and Orgel. Well, Orgel particularly were proponents of alien seeding.
Yes. Well, I don't know too much about Watson, but Crick, he's a big guy in that. So is Orgel. Yeah.
Yeah. Because obviously there's Dawkins as well in. Ben Stein interviewing him. It gets Dawkins with regards to intelligent design to at least get to the conclusion that there's not enough time in the evolution of Earth, and therefore at least Dawkins goes to the fallback that probably life on this planet was seeded by aliens as well. So there's 3 exponents who admit that there's not a sufficient timeline for their thing, so it has to be a seeding by aliens is the next way to push it into the distance, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the least of their problems. And ironically, thanks for bringing that up. That was, what movie was that called?
It's
Expelled.
Education Banned or No Science Allowed or something. It's Ben Stein. Expelled, yeah.
Expelled. Keep that thought in your mind right there. We're going to come back to that briefly. It's going to be pretty funny. So like I was saying, they published these 2 articles in Nature. Like I said, where they essentially said, hey, don't worry about this. We don't need to worry about this stuff, man. Doesn't line up with the evolution. If it's all junk, then it does line up with our fairytale evolution, whatever that is. And they got it from Dick Dawkins down here in 1976, right? They've been doing this stuff. They've been making these claims, and then later on getting their speculations smashed. And this was beautiful, right? So they got everyone hook, line, and sinker on this nonsense. So who else was ready to parrot the incoherent bait, right? Well, we got Kenneth Miller, one of my favorite guys. He's the Mr. Irreducible Complexity straw man that I pummeled before. That halfwit in 1994 says, the human genome is littered with pseudogenes, gene fragments, orphan genes, junk DNA, and so many repeated copies of pointless DNA sequences that it cannot be attributed to anything that resembles intelligent design. In fact, the genome resembles nothing so much as a hodgepodge of borrowed, copied, mutated, and discarded sequences and commands that has been cobbled together by millions of years of trial and error against a relentless test of survival. Oh, that gives me shivers. It works, and it works brilliantly, not because of intelligent design, but because of the great blind power of natural selection. That was riveting, Kenneth Miller.
John, before you move on, mate, that, as you read that, that's exactly what's certainly in my day is taught and is still taught, as far as I'm aware, to my students. You know, that's exactly the basics, because unless you then go into degree level gene studies, this is what will still be taught at degree level.
I'll guarantee it's still taught.
But for supplementary stuff, you know, goes along, you know, that's the line they'll be fed. It's not so much taught because you're not detailing it in your specialty, but obviously there'll always be references, certainly in mine, you know, to this, and that's what pretty sure is still fed.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, and that's okay. I just want everyone to start towing the line, put it down, you know, document it. I want that for a future, because we're gonna see, and I'm gonna take the nail spike Louisville Slugger about its head and shoulders here in a few minutes. But we got to catch a few more of these pretender clowns. Who's the next one we got? The esteemed historian of science, laughing my friggin' butt off, by the way, Michael Shermer. We all know this guy. If you haven't heard of him before, I think he's the editor of Skeptic magazine, skeptic.com. He's a real knucklehead. So, this is what he has to say and why Darwin matters. We have to wonder why the intelligent designer added to our genome junk DNA, repeated copies of useless DNA, orphan genes, gene fragments, tandem repeats, pseudogenes, none of which are involved directly in the making of a human being. In fact, of the entire human genome, it appears that only a tiny percentage is actively involved in useful protein production. Rather than being intelligently designed, the human genome looks more and more like a mosaic of mutations, fragment copies, borrowed sequences, and discarded strings of DNA that were jerry-built over millions of years of evolution. I love you. I love you, Michael.
John, I think I've got a bit of science here.
Do you?
Right. Who, with his supposition, what he could do, because we've got the IV fertilization, to prove his point, he could take all those orphan genes, gene fragments, useless DNA, tandem repeats, and pseudogenes. He could take them all out, couldn't he?
Yes.
Stick them in an egg and see what comes out.
No, I want to take Michael Shermer. I want to do a GoFundMe.
So if...
Go ahead.
Let me say, if useless genes, then no different to human person. So if different genes removed are useless, yeah, then there'll be no difference to the person. Now, that is such even at the most basic level, such a preposterous suggestion that you could remove that from the strand in of itself, from the old dynamics of how the you know, everything's made. It's such an ignorant statement to say, even if they're only there just to hold, repeat and retain and reaffirm so that mutations don't occur. That might be anyway, but do you get me?
Yep.
It's such a moronic statement in itself that's not needed.
I got a better idea.
I'm sorry, mate. Yeah, I'll shut up because there's more to go, but I shall try and hold myself.
I got a better idea. What we're going to do with all these junk DNA proponents, including Alan B. Hey, buddy. What we're going to do, we want to do a GoFundMe, and then we want to gather together these gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, and have them go to their hospital of choice, and we want to remove all their junk DNA. That's what we're going to do. See if you can put your money where your mouths are. Clowns. Let's go to the next one. In 2009, I love this guy. This is one of my favorite knuckleheads. University of Chicago geneticist Jerry A. Coyne wrote, "Perfect design would truly be the sign of a skilled and intelligent designer. Imperfect design is the mark of evolution." Imperfect design? Is design still design? Whether it be imperfect or not? Jerry, I digress. Based on the neo-Darwinian theory, we're going to deal with that here in a second. We expect to find, so this is all based on neo-Darwinian theory, according to Jerry Coyne. Based on neo-Darwinian theory, we expect to find in the genomes of many species silenced or dead genes. Genes that once were useful but are no longer intact or expressed. These are called pseudogenes. The evolutionary prediction, booga booga booga, that we'll find pseudogenes has been fulfilled amply. Indeed, our genome and that of other species are truly well-populated graveyards of dead genes. I love you, Jerry. I truly love you. Hold on.
John, is this, you said Nathan couldn't get his favourite in here. Could this not be a contradiction?
You think it's a contradiction? Yeah, I think it is. I think
Nathan, you know, with the nylon, what the word?
Nylonase.
Nylonase. Sorry,
we're not bringing that up.
Yeah.
Don't you dare.
Gave him a quote that allowed it in.
No. We're gonna leave that one go.
All right. I'm moving on.
All right. So Jerry A. Coyne, his whole knuckleheaded spiel here was based on neo-Darwinian theory, right? Dennis Noble, Department of Physiology, Anatomy, and Genetics at Oxford. And this is in experimental physiology. In this article, I will show that all the central assumptions of the modern synthesis, often also called neo-Darwinism, same thing, have been disproved. Moreover, they have been disproved in ways that raise the tantalizing prospect of a totally new synthesis. Wowee, Dennis. One that would allow a reintegration of physiological science and evolutionary biology. I am inspired. Let me ask you something, Dennis. How do you disprove something that's not proven? This guy disproved speculation. Wow, that's amazing. So I just want to take his baseline and just thrash it. Because all this guy is a knucklehead. I've dealt with him before. He's a real card. Okay, but we got it in there. We got these junk DNA. All these guys are piling on, getting on the bus, on the junk DNA bus, right? I love it. Love it. Then, in September 2012, ENCODE, which is Encyclopedia for DNA Elements, 440 scientists in 32 laboratories around the world dropped an ICBM on the Evotard's melons. From Patricia Diamond, what junk DNA? It's an operating system. Non-coding gene sequences control gene expression and influence disease processes. This is from Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology News, 2013. You ready? Publishing its initial findings in a set of 30 papers in Nature, Genome Biology, and Genome Research, ENCODE indicated that the biologically active portion of the human DNA was considerably higher than any previous estimates. Yeah, the previous estimates were 2%. In an overview paper, ENCODE reported that its members could assign biological functions to over 80% of the genome. Ha! From the Grand Poobah of geneticists, the geneticist of geneticists, Dr. Craig Venter. People arrogantly called parts of the human genome that don't code for protein junk DNA. Today, junk DNA is where all the discoveries are happening. And we know that junk DNA is crucial for gene regulation. How you like that? How you like that, Jerry? How you guys liking this? Michael? Kenneth? The clowns up here, how you liking it now? Right? That's what I want to know. My word. From John Stamatoyanopoulos, MD. I like the first name's cool. The second name, that's a bit challenging. MD, Associate Professor of Genome Sciences and Medicine at the University of Washington, points out, while only about 2% of the human genome codes for proteins, hidden in the remaining 98% are the instructions that basically tell the genes how to switch on and off. It's a lot more than that. It's who, what, when, where, why, and how. From Dan Grauer. This guy. I'll tell you what, I'd like to meet him in an alley. Professor, Department of Biology and Biochemistry, University of Houston. If ENCODE is right, then evolution is wrong. Ha! Yeah. And what's evolution, by the way, there, Dan? Thanks, by the way. How many times would that be now? Abiogenesis, punctuated equilibrium, vestigial organs, convergence, Lucy, Nebraska and Piltdown Man, Ambulocetus and Pachycetus, just went over above, Tiktaalik, honeycreeper beaks, Nylonase Lenski, irreducible complexity, and functional sequence specified complexity. We're going to get to that here in a minute. Information, common sense, the tree, ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, the Haeckel drawing nonsense, macroevolution, the laws of physics, chemistry, biochemistry, Neanderthals. I could go on for quite some time here, but I didn't. How you like me now, Dan? This speaks to it directly. I love this. Evolutionist, renowned professor Dr. John Maddock, director of the Institute for Molecular Bioscience at the University of Queensland, speaking to Introns. I love him for his honesty. Listen to this closely. I think this will come to be a classic story of orthodoxy derailing objective analysis of the facts, in this case for a quarter of a century. Maddox says the failure to recognize the full implications of this, particularly the possibility that the intervening non-coding sequences, introns, by the way, may be transmitting parallel information in the form of RNA molecules, may well go down as one of the biggest mistakes in the history of molecular biology. The blind, a priori adherence to pseudoscience, Evo blockhead fairy tales took precedence and stunted actual scientists from even looking. In exactly the same way, STDs, the soft tissue deniers, have. They're like, why even look? Right? From Takeshi Nagano in No Nonsense Functions for Long Non-Coding RNAs in Cell, the most prestigious life science journal in the world. Long coding RNAs are important and powerful cis and trans regulators of gene activity that can function as scaffolds for chromatin modifying complexes and nuclear bodies, as enhancers and mediators of long-range chromatin interactions. How many of the remaining thousands of long non-coding RNAs will be functional is difficult to say, but it is now clear that it is not all junk derived from promiscuous transcription. Again in the Cell, our bioinformatic analysis of transcriptomic and proteomic data of normal white blood cell differentiation reveal intron retention as a physiological mechanism of gene expression control. Intron retention regulates the expression of 86 functionally related genes, including those that determine the nuclear shape that is unique to granulocytes. Does everyone know what granulocytes are? Those are white blood cells, neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, and mast cells, without which you would vapor lock, I would say, depending on your environment, in less than a day. This is a joke, folks. Dr. Greeley of Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York. It would now take a very brave person to call non-coding DNA junk. Let me rephrase that. It would now take a Dunning-Kruger moron of megalithic proportions to even postulate this nonsense. Let me go with this is going to be quick. Because ERVs, or endogenous retroviruses, is a type of junk DNA. This is going to be real quick. Watch this. From Richard Sternberg, evolutionary biologist. Guess who Richard Sternberg is? He was the guy that they wrote the movie about, Expelled. He got expelled. How you like that? Thanks a lot there, Adam. Richard Sternberg. He got expelled from the Smithsonian. Right? Here we go. This is where he had to say about ERVs. One of the first class of sequences to be expressed shortly after the first or two-cell embryo that is from the zygote, including our zygotes and mouse zygotes. The first class of sequences are the endogenous retroviruses. It was determined in 2004 that if you knock those sequences out, you block their expression. You stop embryogenesis at the 4-cell stage. Question. Aren't viruses obligate parasites? That is, they need life first to exist themselves. Listen to this carefully. I'm going to say this twice. How can viruses who need life to exist first so as to exist themselves be responsible for human life to exist? Poor friggin' vor, please. I'm going to say it again. So how can viruses who need life to exist first so as to exist themselves be responsible, that is the rate limiting step, as it were, for human life to exist, embryogenesis? Take this in. You may not have got it. You may need to read this a couple of times before it hits you right in the forehead like a hammer. What a knuckleheaded contradiction this is. Say it with me now. Kaboom! Didn't even need this. Questions, comments?
Please. So, Adam, you mentioned earlier, I tried to get this in earlier, that they still teach junk DNA, do you say at A level, pre-degree?
I don't think that at any level other than going into the genetics, you'd be taught anything other than that similar thing. There may well be in bold now that it's specified as non protein coding sequencing, but it's still going to carry that junk and that label with it, and that's a very, I think, very clever part of how they control us. It's the way a misnomer is brought in first, and the problems of when you discover contradictions. I don't know if you want to mention that, John, later, but the odds to Expelled and the likes. Was he one of the guys that was on?
No, he was the main guy that they wrote the movie about, Richard Sternberg. That's who motivated them to do the whole show, the whole movie. He was the principal.
There were numerous folks as well. That, I mean, it's a long time since I've seen that. But yeah, for me, Nathan, it's not anything new. If I spoke to students and said junk DNA, I'll know. In fact, I'm not going to get a response of "Don't be daft, mate." There's junk DNA. I think it's a well integrated.
His question was: is it still being taught at university? I haven't been to university in a long time, but
I don't think I'd go to university. But I think the phrase itself is still used. I don't think, like I said, if you go into the degree level, you're gonna come across the contradictions and realize it. But I think the trouble is that the way in which the education system will teach you these things is very little boxes made of ticky tack. Yeah, so you're stuck in them. So to say for my speciality, for example, there's absolutely no need for me to distinguish between those two types of DNA unless I go and specialize. Yeah. So that nomenclature of 2% encoded and the rest is junk. There's no need to progress and learn that actually you stay in your box and any new learning in those fields isn't passed down because it's not sufficient to change any syllabus for this, that, and the other, is it?
Talk about appalling. Huh? Right?
Well, in every field, isn't it?
Yeah, this is appalling, folks. That's why I'm giving it to you. Step by step. I mean, it's on tape. I'm not getting rid of it. Go back and watch it again and listen to it again. It's real easy. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to adjudicate most of the things that I've gone over.
There was a lot of detail in there, John. A lot of geeky stuff, which I like. But actually, there was a paradigm you painted that's really there was the endogenous retrovirus part. But does everyone else get it? In terms of viruses are painted as one of the most simplistic beginning life forms, aren't they? That actually, as you see there, all viruses work by getting in within a cell and reprogramming our DNA to encode their RNA, which then goes on, But means viruses came from us.
Are you asking if anyone out there got the gravity of the situation?
Yeah. Use a pun.
Yes, because viruses are obligate parasites. Just think through it. Go back through what I said, and you'll see it, and you'll start belly laughing. Most of this stuff can be debunked by a high school general biology student. That's how ridiculous this is.
What were you saying, Chocolate?
It sounds like they're telling us that viruses are dependent on life, but the life that the viruses need to depend on are created by the viruses. Like that's
The other way around.
It's the other way around.
Saying,
it's
so in order for life to exist, we would need to have viruses. Well, viruses depend on life existence in order for them to reproduce. So it's a complete nonsense.
Yeah. There wouldn't be viruses without life established first, in other words.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So how could viruses be responsible for life if they need life?
Exactly,
like,
you got
it's
it that
ridiculous.
time. Yeah, you got it that time.
They can't be. That's the answer. But moreover, this whole idea of a cocktail shaker full of junk DNA is utter horse crap, more importantly. One other thing, I can't remember which quote it was, but the most compelling quote for me was the one where they're saying, well, this is where all of the discoveries are being made. And yet previously you don't even need to look at that. It's not conducive with evolution.
Dr. Craig Venter just hammers. Now, he's an evolutionist, but he hammers evotards. Everywhere he goes, I love listening to him, right? Because he's honest. For the most part, now, he believes in evolution. I'm not too concerned with what he believes. He can believe anything he wants. I'm interested in his research. Follow?
Sure.
That was not to you guys, but to the audience.
Seems like since they are not doing real science, they keep tripping up on what they said in the past and have to keep changing it, just like the evolutionists with the Pakistani whale dog. And now you come into
Pakistani whale dog.
Well, that's what it is, right? And then now they say junk DNA, and then later come out, they didn't know what they're talking about. It's very important for regulation. And so it's since they're not sticking to a real science method, they can never get to a truth that could stick to what they're saying because it's always changing. They have to keep changing because they never did it the right way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, they can just move on to the next subject, like Adam was talking about. Yeah, Now, did any one of you guys know that those studies came out in 1980? Some people may know about Dick Dawkins and his selfish gene, but who knew about those 2 studies in Nature in 1980? Nobody. Right? Did anyone know on the panel?
Nope.
Nope.
But same token, the remnants is still being taught. So, no, I didn't know the quote specifically, but from what Adam said, I only found this out tonight, but it's still being taught.
When I say that, it's a way of just sidelining it. If you think about where this level of information would be taught, it's only when you would then start to specialize. So at A level, you're only going to be doing basic biology, and it'd be quite sufficient to just junk it off as junk DNA, because it's still, like you say there, even in QE's presentation there, it's bracketed, isn't it? So it's now become an acceptable phrase, which for the informed, those at degree level, I assume if you're going into doing molecular biology, you'll then become aware that actually, as they state, this is where all the stuff's actually happening in the junk area, you know. But actually, for those that aren't researching that, then to box it and bracket it like that is fine. And certainly for me, if you're not then going into an area that doesn't affect it, because it is very specific, these functions that all this junk's performing, but it doesn't necessarily interfere with a lot of the major cell functions that how most biologists would be dealing with it, which is your basic cell function, which is that 2%. Yeah, so it's not those areas aren't challenging that, I suppose, is the point I'm trying to make. So there's no comeback. You just accept that from academia in that specialty, it's described like that. So yeah, I wouldn't hang my hat on it being put like that, but anything. But it's still a very, I suppose, colloquial term. Is that?
I understand what you're saying. You're saying the way it's packaged is, if I take it one step on to the actual specialized research as you're describing it, you would say that all of the discoveries are being made in the junk DNA, but below that level, it's just, well, that's the junk DNA. Well, that's got connotations that aren't being eradicated by the fact that they're nonsensical connotations that are attached to that word. It's junk, but you just don't have that explicitly explained. It's just still termed junk DNA. Well, isn't that familiar? You know, the parallels between heliocentric teaching and 100-year-old out-of-date gravity. Well, you just don't need to mention it. It might be a passing remark by Cox when he says that it's not a force, but ultimately speaking, the laws of motion, which are not right and are understood at the higher levels, are still taught or generally accepted at the lower levels. Well, it's a bloody outrage.
It's packaged better than that, Nathan. So probably a better example of the packaging and the way it's sold to you academically would be the construct of an atom. But GCSE, you know, junior school level, you're taught a nucleus and then shells. So it looks like a gobstopper. And in those shells are electrons. Then at A level, you go on and, well, that wasn't strictly true. It's not quite like that. They're not shells, they're orbitals, and they don't just go in this pattern, they go in these patterns as well. And then you go on and where we've been talking, where it's all probability distributions and the like. So I remember going from GCSE to A level and going, well, why didn't you just teach me that in the first place? Oh, because it's a simple way of understanding the bigger concept. And then it's the same at uni. Well, why didn't you just teach us this in the first place, you know? And again, it's put to you that there's no need for the extra detail. It's just a more simplified model. But actually, like I say, it's little boxes of ticky-tack where you're kept away and you don't need the challenging information. The fields themselves come up with.
It seems like a way of occulting the information.
Totally. But that the way it's sold academically is as I've described, yeah? Consequences is what you accuse it of, and I agree.
So all these discoveries that they're making in the junk DNA, is that not, are they keeping that on the hush? Is that why it's like, why hasn't it moved from junk DNA to official DNA? Like, I don't understand why we still calling it junk.
That's what he's explaining in terms of the packaging. It's not that you have to overtly say, incorrectly so, that the DNA is junk. You don't package it that way. You just occult the information from the person of the lower levels. We've got an occult teaching system.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I like your STD reference.
Yeah, I like that.
All that.
Soft tissue detached.
Well, they found these bones. Of course, they're going to say it's dinosaur bones. And then they realize it's got soft tissue. And then they said, well, gee, that throws off the dating.
They don't. They say there's nothing to see here. Why even look?
But that's what I hear when I hear the nonsense with the virus. It's the same doublespeak, like when they say they use the rocks to date the fossils, and they date the fossils with the rocks, or use the rocks to date the fossils, or it's ridiculous. I don't understand, and people are still being taught this nonsense. It is outrageous, man. It's terrible.
So if you follow the way in which, particularly the kind of evolutionary, all this kind of false information, there was always a big false headline. Look, we saw it with the Pakistani whale dog. Yeah, there's a big false headline.
That's cracking me up, man.
That's firmly implanted into the public psyche. That's the one that gets all of the mainstream in output, and then the corrections are only ever done in academic circles. So if you're, and I'm excusing, academics that aren't in those fields, that's the same for every academic that's not in another field. You kind of take a lot of your presupposition based on the media. If junk DNA, and I'm not a DNA specialist, until I looked into it, well, it's junk DNA. It's not used for that. So until you bother to look into it, the system's invested time advertising that first burst of information, getting these idiots on. Yeah, only 2% of it works. None of the other stuff ever has the outlay or expenditure to correct it, because that would undo the paradigm that they wanted to put in the first place, that then supports all this ticky-tack boxing. It's a very clever way of operating the system.
Who is it that's telling you? So these reports, it's going to be scientists have discovered, or scientists say that.
You got it. You got it.
The interesting thing in this field, John, isn't it, is what we alluded to earlier with Expelled and some of the people, is that actually, the top brains in this field, a bit like your Michikachu admissions, the top people in this field were doing these admissions at the time, saying, look, I know more than anybody about this. This is impossible. The crap you're trying to still paint it in Darwin terms is nonsense, and you're wasting your time. Yeah. And this is where these people, particularly these, so many people that did stand up against the system were removed from the system. John, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that, especially the big guys like Richard Sternberg. Yeah, he's at the Smithsonian. He's not going to last very long if he challenges something or stamps something that somebody else is challenging. He's not going to last long. Now, somebody lower on the totem pole, it depends. There's also social interactions that are very important to take into account, and I don't want to get into that here, but there could be some that could get away with challenging depending on their stature, but the big guys, like you said, if you're somebody like in the Smithsonian or something like that, and if you come out against the paradigm or the narrative, look out.
That's why we're allowed to challenge this. We're considered the lowest of the low, total retard flat earthers, so they're more than content for us to challenge it with cohesive arguments. Because your average Joe will come here and go, you what? They think Earth's flat. Oh, well, I can disregard everything they say.
Exactly. You got it. And it's like the scenario that I talked about the last time, where I called it the numbers game. They play the numbers because they got the numbers, and they can drown the low numbers out easily. And if some people come out, hey, yeah, that's a really great argument. Wow, yeah. Most people are going to forget about it because they're watching The Bachelor or shoving cheese fries in their face, watching Idol. They ain't going to care. So it can easily drown all those people out. They'll take the small hit for that. Yeah, in 2 weeks, no one's going to remember what you said anyway or hear you, right? It's very subtle. It pisses me off.
They know the magic of the language. There's a few key words that they just need to drop in there. They're doing it right now with climate change. Drop in those two words, along with the word science, every so often, and the details of the mathematics that they've laid out will be forgotten in 2 weeks. But the science claim and the climate change bit, that'll be remembered. That's all they need.
Exactly, you got it. Yep.
Yeah, we're at the beginning of a mass extinction. Yeah, that's what's remembered. That nonsense. Not that actually they've been saying that since the 80s, and by now London should be 15 foot underwater, and actually it's exactly the same level it always has been. So none of their predictions match up. All you hear, and particularly when you look at, it exemplifies what I was saying earlier. That young girl Greta Thunberg is, there's the programming. That's what she actually believes from the programming, and that supports all of the media, underpins all of the secondary educational programming.
And the claimed experts will argue about the statistics whilst claiming they're scientists.
Exactly. Chocolate 10th. Any final thoughts on? We're going to round out with junk DNA, and we're going to turn to another of Adam's topics here in a second. Any final thoughts on that?
My only thought is, after listening to the dialogue that you three just had, is the universities, the media complex, the governments, it's all a game. They're controlling people. As Nathan says, they'll pop in a few times the word science. And then, like Adam says, they'll get things wrong for 10 years straight. And then the people will totally forget about it and not realize that the source of their information is pseudo, and they've been lying all the time. Such a shame.
Chocolate?
Yeah, I would say the same as Temp. Not more needs to be said. It's a shame that people are being taught this nonsense in school and they're paying for this. And these guys are up there just saying, yeah, we just made it up. And oh yeah, we might have fucked it up a little bit. Oh, don't worry about that. Oh, the model is wrong. Don't worry about that. Oh, but those crazy flat earthers, oh, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just out there calling out our pseudoscience all day. Don't pay them any mind. Keep looking up at space. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yep.
So yeah, let's move on, man.
Same techniques are employed. Yep. Betty, any thoughts on this junk DNA and any admin?
Yeah, that I've looked at some code, the DNA code, and if you go over that in Google, and go over the Bible, then there is a sort of a Bible message encoded in DNA that people found. It is a message in Aramaic, and they try to not go all about it and say anything about it, but I think that every letter of protein in the DNA it gets a letter, and that reads out a message, and it's really profound if you go and look at it and Google it. So I think that the whole DNA is even more and more in depth than we even can imagine, and I think it's a signature of God. That's what I think, and to call it junk, I think that's wrong. But that's another topic.
I think through the quotes and the timeline that QE showed there, I think, and this is the ego of scientists, they make a discovery and that's it. They've discovered everything. So 2% is the only thing that matters. Everything else is junk, and like I say, it's a underlining that demonstrates the ego of scientists, and they know everything. Whenever they make an announcement, it's not we've only discovered 2%. It's we figured this 2% out, so we'll label the rest as junk. Now, that's again a psychological ploy. It's not saying useless directly. It's a slang term in of itself anyway, but it's basically an admission as you follow the timeline to say it's the other stuff we don't really know how it works, and that's proven in the timeline.
Yeah, but isn't it stupid on a fundamental level? I mean, just from a manufacturing point of view, because this is what we're talking about. Proteins, more or less, let's make them transaxles, right? Well, what does it take to make a transaxle? Are you just concerned with the 2% that makes the transaxle? How about who, what, when, where, why, and how much? How much it's going to cost? What type of logistics behind the transaxle is there? Like 18 plants, right? You're just not just going to make a transaxle and that's it, right? You have to have all the pedigree logistics, correct?
Got a better example. In Terminator, Sarah Connor crushes the Terminator, and then in Terminator 2, essentially, the place that she crushed it, which was Cyberdyne, finds the chip. It'd be akin to them going, "Oh, you know what this chip's got? And it's got something that's akin to a resistor. At least 2% of it's made up of basically resistors. Well, the rest of it's just useless because we know what a resistor is."
Yeah, good one.
From an evolutionary point of view, John, man, this is a lot of protein encoding that goes off, but 98% of it being useless. Surely if 98% of it was useless, then there would be lots of genetically evolved creatures that only had 2% DNA and didn't bother wasting their time because they'd evolved to that state.
Yeah, Adam, you can't be critically thinking like that here.
Leave it alone then.
Yeah. All right, anything else? We'll finish up with junk DNA. Betty?
Good.
Nope.
All right, Adam, this is the final topic for this evening or this afternoon. And this was brought to you by Adam. And Adam wanted a little bit on functional sequence specified complexity. I'm going to have to tell you, over all the proofs of proofs of a creator, this is my favorite, where it's simple elegance. A second grader, incoherent second grader, can adjudicate this in between iterations, Candy Crush. And when I first ran into this many years ago, it immediately took me to Romans, the passages 1:20. And it says, the invisible things of him are clearly seen. Let me say that again. The invisible things of him are clearly seen. On its face, sounds like a contradiction. But it's not. To me, it's speaking to this. If it's not speaking to this in whole, then it's in part. And I'll bounce that back off everyone at the end to see what they think after I'm finished with it. So, functional sequence specified complexity. Hallmarks reveal intent, purpose, planning, choice, interlinked systems, often with contingency, contrived, without deterministic law-like necessity. There are 3 types of complexity. Listen, if you don't get anything more out of this, get this. Because you'll hear everyone saying, well, just because something's complex doesn't mean it's design. No, crayon muncher. There are 3 types of complexity. Number 1, random sequence complexity. Number 2, ordered sequence complexity. And number 3, functional sequence specified complexity. Examples? Random sequence complexity is just like how it sounds, or the aftermath of a tornado. Ordered sequence complexity just like how it sounds. Crystals, snowflakes, we're going to get to that. Sand dunes, fractals, right? The repeating patterns. Functional sequence specified complexity. It puts the lotion in the basket. Sand castles, genetic code, barbecue grills, Indy cars, hyper nanotech machines and robots, kinesin, ATP synthase, flagellum, cilia, ad nauseum, thousands of others in your cells right now. See the difference between those three? So random sequence complexity and ordered sequence complexity equals a nature construct, whereas functional sequence specified complexity is an intelligent design construct. The difference between this and this. Does everyone get this? This is random and ordered sequence complexity jumbled up,
We're not
and
seeing it.
functional sequence specified complexity. Do you see this, people? Second graders
don't
see it. I'm sorry, is somebody talking?
Yeah,
we do.
we're not seeing it because we're not sharing it.
Don't worry, it's just Discord. The audience has got it. It's fine. Don't worry about us in Discord.
Sorry about that. That must be a Discord issue. Yep. You can always watch it back. Appreciate the warning, though.
Oh,
Thank you.
no, because I okay, now it's there. Yeah, I see it.
Okay.
Good.
All right. I was on a roll right there. Somebody's trying to stop me.
I'll roll you back in.
Is this a good?
I'll try and roll you back in. So you got the random complexity in the sand. It's this, and then you've got the functional specified sequence complexity in this. Now, the difference between these two things is not time.
That's beautiful, Nathan. Thank you very much. I liked it. What's on it?
No, it's time and lucky wins, Nathan.
I want to spend a little.
No.
I think you need to. I think that is a really important point. That it is, whilst mathematically, I suppose, possible, it is it is impossible. That this is more likely to happen than what we're suggesting, because there's still another layer to this. I don't know.
It just on the joking side, it can't be time because time's busy with space time. It can't work on the sandcastles.
This on-screen required intelligent design. That's the bottom line.
No amount of this. You see this random and ordered sequence complexity? No amount of this, no amount of time, no amount of energy. I can bring a truck of friggin' butane and spill it all over this, set it on fire. I can explode a nuclear warhead here. I can bring a tornado through here. Increase energy to the max. You're never going to get this. Ever. If you think so, then there are 1-800 numbers for help. Okay?
QE, not only that, but to get that you have right now, that beautiful sandcastle there, that guy had to learn how to do it. Not every human being could do that.
Very true. Do you see the comparisons yet? I'm going to give you the comparison, right? The functional sequence complexity, specified complexity in this sandcastle isn't 1/1,000,000th in a single cell. 1/1,000,000. It's not even that. The functional sequence specified complexity of a single, what they call primitive cell, outweighs the functional sequence complexity here by exponential magnitudes. I don't think you could put a number on it. That's the point. Move on. Still connection. But this is pretty important. Maybe I shouldn't move on. Right? Because this is what they say to coup de grace. Anything else on this?
Yeah, it is the coup de grace. Everyone clapped because, bottom line is the comparison you're saying it's orders of magnitude in terms of the complexity, and that's inherent in our cells. Now, by virtue of the comparison, you're saying no matter how much time, energy, or any other substance is put into the equation, you're never going to go from the sand wavy lines to the sandcastle, even though it is considerably more simple than a single most basic cell. So, ergo, you cannot have this come out of just a soup of nothing and luck. You can't have it. You've got to have intelligence.
It's kind of worse than that, in that if one grain of sand is out of place on that sandcastle, it still looks all right. Yeah. If 2% of it or 1% of it is out of place, it looks fine. You do that to a cell, it just doesn't work. It doesn't function. It's not a structure that's pleasing to the eye. Each bit of its encoding has a function, as we've just learned. You can't have a single grain of sand out of place either.
It's very important, Adam. That's a good point. Very important point. Yep.
It mean?
I see why this is. You said your favorite, John, because this one's easy. I mean, a couple of brain cells and you can figure it out. There's no way without some type of intelligence can you get to that sandcastle. No way.
Yep.
It's so simple that I could see why that's the killer right here. Like, you're done after this.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I don't understand how people.
This was the whole point, Chocolate, when I told my biology teacher the human body is so much more complex. Just the ear, the eye, everything, every little part. And you want me to believe that everything happened by chance? I mean, this is why just as a kid, I could not accept it. It just did not make common sense.
Yeah, but that's why to me it goes back to the junk DNA. Like, it's almost like you guys have the audacity to be able to look at ourselves and see how complex we are, and then look at a part of ourselves like junk DNA and say, oh, it's just junk. So much junk that we call it junk when it's part of us. Like, what the hell kind of sense does that make? That's insanity. So yeah, man, this is the killer right here.
Not only that, but if they had DNA at the time Darwin put out his theory, unsubstantiated at that, it would have never made the day. It barely survived anyway. So if the information they had on DNA was there when Darwin was there, there's no way evolution would even be taught in schools. So now after it's been there and they've all kind of owned it, they have to pick at DNA. So they look for areas that maybe they don't quite understand what the use of it is, and they say, oh, that's junk DNA. So, so much for God.
Betty, final thoughts on just this one? We're going to continue on with the, we're going to put some more daggers in it.
Yeah, well, if you look at these two pictures, I mean, it goes even further than just looking at DNA, right? You know when something is designed or not, right? Even those sand grains that you see are designed. So how do we have the stuff to build this whole sandcastle with if it wasn't even there? So everything is created.
That's a
so
great
there
point.
is no reason to deny God, right?
Yep. She's going down. Get your own dirt.
Yep.
I was just about to say that's a great way to end this particular section. Right. So even the first one. Yeah, right on, Betty. Where'd you get the sand in the first place? Where'd you get that dirt?
Yeah.
That's another level. We're dealing with it's just one more level up from that. But you are correct.
That was mine wasn't the dirt thing, but it was again, this to me is an underpinning of probably a more complex one. This is a lot more easier to visually comprehend, but think about the encoding. You can have all these complex grains of sand, proteins, and in this case, you can comprehend sticking the sandcastle together randomly. But when you've got a cell, you're not just sticking it together. The way in which each part interacts been programmed. So outside of the randomness of this stuff coming together, there still has to be an inherent coding for proteins X, Y, and Z to mean something, to mean go and replicate me. Yeah. That can't evolve randomly, just like the blueprint for this can't evolve randomly. It may evolve randomly, yeah, but it wasn't. It can't evolve a second time. But there is a blueprint that's been placed there that has within the constructs of how the molecules fit together a way of encoding and passing on the information, and that secondary thing that sits above this of basically how the molecules come together and work together once you've made these fantastical structures. That's what we're talking about here. But once, how the hell those fantastical structures operate together even within a cell is, for me, the real big one that got me, John. You know, you can almost excuse somebody being able to have the million monkeys type in to get, you know, type the Bible out or whatever, but you know what I mean, or excuse lucky wins and whatever to put this together because you've got billions of years and probability and all that. Push it away from you, the real problem. Yeah, but for me, what you can't undo is the creator's encoding of how these fantastical structures that randomly appear.
Right. You got several independent but dependent on each other interlinked systems. Right? You have to be able to communicate. That is information. That's the monkey in the room. That's the fly in the ointment.
There was just one more thing. By comparison as well, when you're talking about a cell, and I know we're talking about cells, and earlier 10th Man talked about something like the eyeball or the ear. There's a level of inherent perfection with just a cell. And what you're talking about is the way it interacts with its surrounding other mechanisms. There's a level of efficiency and perfection that is just so far removed from this sand castle. It's untrue. A level of perfection that if it is in any way flawed, it dies. It doesn't function anymore, as Adam pointed out earlier.
Yep.
So just the perfection and efficiency is just not even close to being represented in the sandcastle. Now, even though it's a crude example, that's basically what I'm saying, it's still a great example because it shows the difference between something that's been specified with its complexity versus something that isn't. And that requires intelligence, a plan, and understanding, not just random chance and time.
Exactly. Well said. All right, let's pummel. Go ahead.
I've got one more on that in terms of the fact that there is a design there, and you talk about but I'm pretty sure, John, it is in the Expelled video. It talks about a single-cellular organism with a flagellum, as you mentioned, which is just basically a little tail that enables a cell to move in fluid, you know. And actually, on the most basic level, it consists of a long chain for the tail, and then at the bottom, 8 complex polypeptides, which are all very different, but put together in a specified sequence of specified polypeptides in this particular order. It forms a turbine that drives that little tail and makes it wiggle.
Yeah, it's a rotary motor.
With a clutch. It's a rotary micro machine rotary. Any other combination of those complex polypeptides means you get nothing. That means that at any point, the evolvement of every other part of that complex machine is worthless. And by evolution's own definition, that species would have died out.
Yep.
The level of complexity for just a round blob cell to evolve a tail that it can wiggle is beyond the probability a millionfold of wind blowing that together.
I've got to add something as well. You're going to hate me, QE. Not only that statement that Adam's just made debunks the entire process of evolution, because that tail, that one tail in that one cell, if it hadn't evolved that tail, the entire thing, in this case, say a person, wouldn't survive from that one cell needing to evolve to the process where it had that almost perfect turbine. You know, it just wouldn't work. The entire process fails if that one thing, that one tiny thing, needs to evolve somewhat. It's preposterous.
Yep, you got it, sir. Yes. All right, we want to kill this thing. Yeah, thank you. I think everyone's got it out there. This is pretty simple. This is pretty simple and easy to adjudicate and reconcile. Correct. All right, let's finish her up. This is still going to be on functional sequence specified complexity. Let's see what the subject matter experts have to say about it. So remember, Leslie Orgel, he's the grand poobah of origin of life research, and we talked about him up there in 1980 with junk DNA. This is him in 1973. In brief, living organisms are distinguished by their specified complexity. Crystals are usually taken as the prototypes of simple, well-specified structures because they consist of a very large number of identical molecules packed together in a uniform way. Lumps of granite or random mixtures of polymers are examples of structures that are complex but not specified. The crystals fail to qualify as living because they lack complexity. The mixtures of polymers fail to qualify because they lack specificity. From H.P. Yockey, and not Claude Shannon, H.P. Yockey is the king of information theory. This is also in 1977. The attempts to relate the idea of order with biological organization or specificity must be regarded as a play on words that cannot stand careful scrutiny. Informational macromolecules can code genetic messages and therefore can carry information because the sequence of bases or residues is affected very little, if at all, by self-organizing physicochemical factors. What H.P. Yockey is trying to say here, folks, is that ink, paper, and glue molecules aren't conspiring together to put together letters, then form those letters into words, then form those words into coherent sentences with meaning. I think he's got a pretty good case. You? My word. From the king of the second law of thermodynamics, Ilya Prigogine, back in this is all back in the 70s. From Physics Today. Listen closely. The point is that in a non-isolated, open system, there exists a possibility for the formation of ordered, low-entropy structures at sufficiently low temperatures. This ordering principle is responsible for the appearance of ordered structures, such as crystals, as well as for the phase or phenomena of phase transition, snowflakes. Unfortunately, snowflakes, this principle cannot explain the formation of biological structures. So when you hear people say, yeah, but snowflakes are complex, right? We're talking about something completely different in biological structures. That's the point. No amount, like I said before, no amount of random sequence complexity or ordered sequence complexity or the combination thereof will ever lead to functional sequence specified complexity. A couple more examples of functional sequence specified complexity. Cholecystokinin is a peptide hormone functional protein produced in the mucosal epithelium of the small intestine and stimulates release of digestive enzymes from the pancreas, vital for digestion and absorption. Without them, you die. And without it, you die. They got synthetic ones now that digestive enzymes, so you get around it, but you get the picture.
It's called Creon, John.
Yeah. They got synthetic ones, but That's not conceptually. You get the picture. The same thing with albumin. Go ahead.
As you underline in red, without it you die. Yeah, you struggle to digest them.
Yes, without synthetic versions, that means man-made making these enzymes, or from the pancreas, you will die. No doubt about it. That's why pancreatic cancer is so how would you say, abrupt ending for most people. I digress. Albumin is another example of functional protein. It's only produced by the liver. It consists of a single polypeptide chain of 580 amino acids. Of its many functions, its main function is to maintain intravascular, oncotic, colloid osmotic pressure. It's vital to homeostasis. Without it, you die. They are each functionally specific, sequentially complex. You cannot interchange them. They are specifically designed for their specific roles and specific functions. What I'm trying to say, even though both are functional proteins, you can't interchange them to do each other's job, is what I'm trying to say. Hope everyone got that.
Maybe a good example on this is akin to what Nathan was saying. So if we wanted to think in a kind of evolution, if you could have a person that could digest plastic, for example, John, yeah, I know I'm crowbarring it in, and one of the intermediary evolutionary mechanisms was the transference of the production of cholecystokinin into whatever digested this plastic to break it down into smaller long chain hydrocarbons that you could then use. Okay, you could presuppose a mechanism if you had A, B, but to get to C in the middle, you've got this person that no longer has cholecystokinin to break down to give the input digestively. Yeah, so they never evolved to this intermediary. The only possible thing that you ever get is this changing from a dog to a cat, where you have this
get
person
constipated.
who's suddenly. The point of the logic here, where again it ends evolution, is how does the person that's being fed by everybody around them normal food know that actually they can't eat that anymore? They have to eat plastic. These evolutionary changes are nonsensical in these functional specified systems, because they are so specified, not just in that sense, but then also in their interlinking cascade systems that they have with each other.
Yes. The cascading systems, exactly. You got it. Yep.
I'll stop there.
Yep. Let's finish it up. If you're still having a case of willful stupids with complexity or mindlessly parroting pseudoscience priests, call or email the SETI Institute, that is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and ask them how they tell the difference between random sequence complexity and ordered sequence complexity and functional sequence specified complexity. They'll tighten your shot group right quick. Information, all of biology, life, the genetic code, replication, transcription, translation, all metabolic pathways, all of physics, quantum mechanics, basically all of reality are quintessential examples of functional sequence specified complexity. Therefore, a creator. Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day. Comments, questions?
Just Adam, great that he pushed you into doing this in such detail, because at the end of part 4 I was like, that's it, that's a job, it's a good and brilliant, we can move on. And I've really enjoyed this presentation. So excellent. I'm glad Adam talked you into doing it.
Yeah, thanks, John. Nice. And generally, I mean, I've waffled there, but without John's much more superior knowledge to put something like that together, we can't waffle and have this chat, mate. And I can see the work there. Cheers, pal. Has it been a good?
Makes sense now. I've heard John or Quantum Eraser mention functional sequence specified complexity on multiple occasions. Without this breakdown, I didn't understand it before this show. I do understand it now, and it's It seems like it's obvious to say because it's just been broken down and explained in such a concise way. But the clue is in the title, right? It's functional. It's got a sequence. It's very specific in terms of what it do, and it's complex. Now, it has to be all of the above, and you can only achieve all the above by creating it, by a creator. You can't have the beautiful perfection that is the cells in our body if they need to change state. So with Adam's previous example with digesting plastic, it is akin to, I'll use a slightly different example. If you've got a berry that is very poisonous to us, and suddenly you're left in a situation where you're surrounded, or a population is surrounded by that as their only food source, it's an implication by way of evolution that everybody can eat the poison berries and suddenly evolve to actually digest them. No, there isn't a function to do that. So everybody just dies. Nobody evolves into suddenly digesting the poison and having it be nutrition. That's not how it works. So to suggest that you've got a cell that's just waiting from the cocktail shaker of junk DNA to luckily enough form the right function on the fly and everyone else will die out and then natural selection will prevail is utter horseshit.
Exactly.
I was searching for a quote from Origin of the Species, Chapter 6 from Darwin about the eye, and I found it. Organs of extreme perfection and complication, to suppose that the eye, with all its immutable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances and for admitting different amounts of light and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, I freely confess, absurd to the highest degree. And then, of course, we know he goes on to state that it could have happened because it's really just a long war against God, and they have to make it up. And when they see the eye, they freely admit how complex it is, and yet they keep going with what they have to do, which is
the
make
eye's
it up.
better than that, Temp, isn't it? The eye's just the pinnacle of evolutionary bullshittery.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you think about any cellular response to high intensity UV rays or full spectrum rays, is to protect itself. Now, to suggest that in any evolutionary way, one of these cells didn't go, oh, I'm not going to protect myself in any evolutionary response, even if you believe that. Yeah. What it did go is go, oh, I like that tingle. Let me send that to my central processing unit in my multicellular organism and use it as an input, right? And then adjust a cell so that you constantly orientate it to the concentration of light input. At what point ever could any of those cells, first of all, withstand constant exposure, and we pointed there, and most fundamentally for me, is at what point does any bit of sunlight hitting a cell generate a whole new neuronal pathway that generates all the second? It's all these links that
I know the answer.
Well, you can have all of Darwin's focus bullshit afterwards, but you'll never get that initial neuron. But yeah, go on then, Nate.
They imply it's by what was that conditioning that was talked about in Ben's presentation, where you get the dog to salivate.
Pavlov.
That's it. They imply that development of that light detecting cell in the first instance was purely out of motivation to get better food, and heading towards the light was exactly what did that. So that's how they imply it. Pavlovian conditioning for food.
And again, a great example of functional specified complexity. Yeah, because you've got an aural input, as in a bell. Okay, and that then creates a vagal reflex to create gastric stimulation of acid. Yeah, so all of those things are then interlinked secondarily to a memory, yeah, of feeding and the bell noise. That level of specified intercomplexity of just those systems alone show you that you can't evolve those things. For example, the first kind of gastric system. Did it have acid to receive food, or did it not have acid and receive food, or did it have the acid, not receive food, and burn its own stomach out?
Well,
Because your stomach has a protective lining to digest the food.
that's
So
the
which
poison
came
example,
first?
isn't it? That's the poison example. So that's you saying we're in a position where we've only got poison berries around us, and everyone eats them, and we haven't got a means of digesting them. But sure enough, some of us will be lucky enough to digest that poison, and we will survive as the strong ones. Yum yum, poison berries. Well, no, that just simply won't happen. Everyone will just die.
Yeah. You guys are having fun with this. This is like a jungle gym with you guys now, right?
A to B to C, but you can't have B.
Hollow man, isn't it? That's part of the brainwashing.
Exactly. It's hollow. It's substanceless. There's no cowbell. There's no science. It's grown adults making up stories to fit their paradigm, which is nonsensical buffoonery. It's been pummeled scientifically. Actual science? You know that type? Yeah. You guys know what science is yet? Not you on the panel. You, the royal you out there. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Any final thoughts? Let's go around the room. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah, Nathan?
Just check out the Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. Going out about an hour on Nathan Oakley channel. I'll stick a link in as the show ends. Thank you very much for having me. Excellent topic. Thank you, Adam, for bringing it up and making sure that John covered it in such excellent detail. Really good presentation, Quantum Eraser. Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it, sir.
I'll follow then. Well, yeah. Cheers, John. Like I said, I appreciate it, and I recognise the work involved in doing that, and I won't hesitate to nominate another topic next time. Cheers, buddy.
Thanks, man. Ken?
Excellent job tying all the loose ends. Just flow, John. Well done. Appreciate your work and effort.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yeah, man. Great presentation. Shout out to Adam for bringing up the specified complexity, because honestly, when I saw this a couple of years ago, when you talked about this on Texas channel, like it hit me with, like, it's so simple to see how people have been just duped into thinking that there's everything came from nothing. And just seeing, because to me that's what it does. That's what does it for me. I see the complexity in the world around me, and I know that that came from intelligence. There's no way that that came from nothing for me. So yeah, when I heard you say it, you kind of just put a name on it for me. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, man, good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming. Betty, final thoughts?
Yeah. The message which was in the DNA code, but which was translated from Aramaic, it says, "Hello, my children. This is Yahweh, the one true Lord. You have found creation's secret. Now share it peacefully with the world." And that's what you just did, John. So, and as a last thing, I have a super chat from Paul Hall, and he says, "Only from a mind can instructions come."
Amen, Paul. Thank you very much. You're exactly correct. No doubt about that. Is that it?
Man?
Yeah.
Who was the last quote from, Paula? Only from a mind. Who's...
That
Paul,
was from
that's great
Paul
too.
Hall.
Can you repeat Paul's super chat? Because I thought that was really good.
Only from a mind can instructions come.
In other words,
Was that a super chat? Was that a super chat?
Yeah, it was a super chat. Yep. Thanks a lot, Paul. You're exactly
you
correct.
shouldn't have to pay for that wisdom, John. You shouldn't have to. That's a good quote. I like that.
That's from Paul.
Yes.
Paul Holt, regular on the panel, Flat Earth debate. Check it
All
out.
right.
Nathan Oakley. Minutes. Anyway, we're all rumpusing John
Shout
Wallace.
out,
It's-
I'll cease and hand over to chocolate then. Sorry.
yeah. That's okay. That's all right. I can put up with it. I'm conditioned now. It was a great show. Thanks, guys, for coming. I hope it was helpful for not only the panel members, but the people out there in the audience. Especially, don't worry about the evolutionary nonsense. I could care less about that. If you can't tell that it's a fairy tale right off the bat, then you got bigger problems than whether the Earth is flat or a sphere or not. You following me? The most important thing was the functional sequence specified complexity part. That's more or less why I did this last and final presentation, just to put the cherry on top. Before we go, like I said, I'd like to thank the panel. Thank you, guys. Betty, beautiful Betty, thank you very much. I would like to, I did forget something. If you'd like to follow me, I'm on BitChute now. So the link is in the info box below. Right? And a reminder, I know we talked about it at the beginning, but Ballbusters Saturday at 1 p.m. U.S. Central. Look at that. Ballbusters, not McWest. That's perfect timing. But Ballbusters on Saturday, 1 p.m. U.S. Central, 7 p.m. UK. You gotta be there. It's the world premiere, the unveiling of the #1 ball killer, bar none. There is no rebuttal against it, and we're just gonna pound away at it. You gotta be here. So, thanks, guys. Remember, take no prisoners. No quarter will be asked. None shall be given. And remember, I'll be back.